So I just finished interviewing trombonist and educator Liz Chappell. A lot of you out there might know her through social media, but to give you a little more background information on her, she did her bachelor's and her master's over at ASU, Arizona State University. She did her undergrad in music education and her graduate studies in music performance. During her time at ASU, she studied with some renowned trombone and low brass instructors, including Ralph Sauer, Doug Yo, and Sam Palafian. So she's performed regularly with the Arizona Broadway Theater, and perhaps most notably, she's toured and performed with the Tony and Emmy Award-winning Broadway show Blast. So before we get started, I just wanted to remind you all to check her out on social media if you haven't already. She has a YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all those links are available down below. I'd say probably the easiest way to access them all is through her website, and that link is also available down below. So let's get started. How's it going, Lisa?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Sequestered here in pandemic mode, so.
Yep, same. Not leaving the house, so.
I guess as a lot of your fans know, you're over in Japan right now. Is that right?
Yes, I am in Japan. I've been living here for the past 4 years, so I did get stuck in the United States for a few months this year with
Oh,
travel
okay.
restrictions and everything, but I am back in Japan now, so I'm
I
happy to
see.
be home.
So
Yeah.
that's what it was. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, there were tons of travel restrictions. So, I mean, and even now, Japan isn't really open, to
Hmm.
foreigners and people on vacation and stuff like that. It's
Hmm.
just because I already lived here that I was able to
Ah, I got it.
get
Got it. Got it. Got it.
back. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. You got to go back home.
Yes, very happy to be home.
Okay, so let's get right to it. Question
Sure.
number one. What first got you into music?
Yeah, so this was an interesting question. I certainly don't have like that one life-changing musical experience that, some musicians have. Like they saw this amazing musician and it changed their life. I really didn't have that. It's just as long as I can remember, I always really loved music. I would certainly say from the time I was really little, I loved Disney movies. I loved musicals, just TV shows. Like it was like anything that had music in it, I was obviously way more drawn to than something, without music.
Yeah.
And I was always singing along and, just that kind of stuff, just really being into whenever I heard music, I thought it was really interesting. And then also when I was little, my parents bought me a keyboard that I had.
Hmm.
So not that I really knew what I was doing, but I, loved, just pressing all the buttons and trying out the different sounds and creating little melodies. And like I said, not that I knew what I was doing, but I just thought it was really fun. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. So I guess to add on to that is question number two.
Sure.
Why did you choose the trombone?
I actually came to the trombone a little later in life. So I
Interesting. Okay.
started out, the first instrument I played was piano. I started taking piano lessons when I was younger, maybe around 8 or 9 years old. So I took piano lessons for a few years.
Hmm.
And then when I got to elementary school, I started in band, as most of us do. And actually, the first instrument I played was saxophone.
Mm.
But I wasn't super into the saxophone. I didn't really like it. So about 6 months later, I switched over to the clarinet, which was the instrument that I really wanted to play. And I actually played clarinet up until high school, and actually my first 2 years of high school as well.
Mhm.
And I switched over to trombone. It was going into high school because I
Wow.
really wanted to be in the marching band. And so at that time at my high school, the marching band director had like a limit for flutes and clarinets to join marching
Ah,
band because
yep.
otherwise it would have been like, I don't know, 50 flute and clarinet players and nothing else. So he was encouraging a lot of incoming freshmen to play brass instruments, specifically low brass instruments. And I had already always been interested in music and learning new instruments. So I was like, oh, okay, I'll do that. I'll play another instrument.
Just play the trombone.
Yeah, and I just chose the trombone. It looked really fun, watching marching band and seeing trombones and all the glisses and all the loud stuff. I just remember it being like a really loud sound. And I was just like, that looks so cool. That's the instrument I want to try. And then once I tried it, I really liked it. And
Yeah.
also just hanging out with the trombone players, like playing flute and clarinet, you're like sitting up in the front row, and it was just a
Mm.
different experience. Then I remember sitting in the back with all the trombone players and being like, whoa, this is cool back
Yeah.
here. So I just really took a liking not only to the instrument itself, but all the other trombone players, all the people. So
Yeah, the social aspect. That's great.
yeah,
It's funny. You were saying you started off on saxophone first.
yeah,
Couple of things. I think usually I think it's the other way around. You start off on clarinet first, and
yeah,
then maybe you might move on to saxophone later. But I've heard of a couple of stories where that's not the case. So I thought,
yeah.
well, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, so I kind of feel, I had to try out quite a few instruments until I found one that I really liked or really like spoke to me.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Cool. Yeah. Well, we're glad to have you on our team as trombonists.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
very
team
special
trombone.
society, I guess.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, all my best friends are trombone players. My husband is also a trombone player.
Mm,
So
that's cool.
yeah.
Okay, on to the next question. What trombonist or musician has had the greatest impact on your playing?
So this person for me actually isn't a trombonist, mainly a tuba player, Sam Palafian. Um, so Sam was at ASU when I was there. He was the tuba professor there when I was
Okay.
at Arizona State University. And gosh, I don't even know where to start. Like he literally taught me everything, not just about music, but I guess like about life. Um,
Hmm.
he certainly taught me the value of getting up early and working really hard. During the time that Sam was at ASU for the tuba euphonium studio, he had like a daily warm-up class every day where they did, the breathing gym and the brass gym and all those famous methods. And
Yeah.
they did it super early. It was like at 7 a.m. or 7:30, like definitely before the first scheduled class of the day. And it was required for the tuba and euphonium students, but there were like a few trombones who would, go if they got the invite.
Hmm.
And so I started doing that, and just that idea of getting up early, getting your warm up in, working on your fundamentals before other people even like woke up for the day.
Hmm.
So that idea of just getting up early, working hard, making sure you're doing your fundamentals every day.
Yeah.
Um, he definitely taught me the value of that. Also, I mean, just how to practice. I know that it's like, that sounds so vague, but he was able to break down practicing for me in like a super methodical way of, how to like take a piece of music and take a really small chunk. And, he would tell me to slow the tempo down to 50% and just really get in there. And I mean, it was just so methodical, but it's kind of crazy to think like, unless you teach kids that, or I was in college at the time, but unless
You're good.
someone is taught that, it's really crazy how many, even college musicians or even getting into the professional world, like people who never receive that kind of information or instruction. Yeah. So
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
certainly, I would say he taught me, how to practice, just that
Yeah.
methodical way. Um,
So it's you were saying this was a tuba professor at the time.
yeah.
How, playing trombone, how did that come about? I guess to add on to that question.
Um, I guess Sam Plavin at the time, I mean, he was always just super involved in everything that was going on in the music school. I think my involvement with him, I also took lessons with him for a semester, so that's another thing.
Okay.
But I
Okay.
think my involvement with him started when I was in my master's degree,
Okay.
and well, no, I think I did stuff before that, but my main involvement, I think he was trying to get me to play in some of the jazz ensembles.
Okay.
And he created this program at ASU that was actually done through the athletic bands, which was called Dixie Devils. So he got
Hmm.
really into creating like a traditional jazz, like trad jazz kind of group or
Wow, that's cool.
ensemble. Yeah, so he organized that through the athletic bands. So there was a main band, Dixie Devils, and then I think I started in the program maybe this second year or so. Because then he then created three different bands, two like traditional Dixieland style ensembles, and then there was one called Sparky Sliders that was actually all trombones. Uh, and he was just recruiting and getting people to do that, and he was just always really into, like, he's like, you got to start playing jazz, you got to start doing other stuff. And he just kind of tracked me down at school, and he was like, come to the warm-up classes. Like, it was almost like he didn't take no for an answer, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So he certainly had that way of doing that with people at the school, even if they played other instruments like trombones. And I know he even worked with some of the woodwind players at the school, you know, just, I don't know, anyone that he kind of just saw and was like, hey, you need to start doing this. And I don't know. That was cool to have that kind of musical environment at Arizona State where, you know, there were just all sorts of other teachers there, like not also just staying in within your area, but being able to explore like different musical options, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, that's cool to have that kind of seriousness early on. I know a lot of people aren't that lucky. Like you said, not everyone has the privilege of meeting someone like that who really pushes them. It seems like some people have the drive, but to have the drive, have someone push you like that, and have the information, seems like it
Yeah.
would really help you out, especially early on in college. You know.
Yeah. So, yeah, this was in my master's degree more so, but still, yeah. And I mean,
Okay. Okay.
but he taught me just, oh my gosh, just stuff about performing too, like how to prepare for a big performance and how to get ready and just all this stuff that, like, yeah, if no one tells you or no one teaches you, there's no way you're going to know it. So yeah, it was amazing to have somebody there that, and like I say, he wasn't even a trombone player. Like, all this stuff we're talking about isn't really necessary, like necessarily even specific to trombone playing. It's just
Yeah.
how to be a musician, really. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, every day I pick up the horn, like I think of something he taught me, you know, like
Yeah.
even to this day. So
Yeah. As I'm sure you know, it's more than just playing trombone. You know, the life lessons, working hard.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Nice. Thanks for
Definitely.
sharing that.
Yeah,
Okay, on to the next question.
sure.
Question number 4. In terms of your career, could you tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now?
I got my bachelor's degree in music education, also from Arizona State
Mhm.
University. So I got my bachelor's degree in music ed, and I kind of knew halfway through the degree, I was like, I don't want to really be a band teacher. But, you know, I am happy that I finished and got the degree.
Mhm.
Um, Before my last semester of my music ed degree,
Mhm.
I got the opportunity to do this show in Japan. This was in 2008, called Odyssey. It was a stage performance show similar to Blast, but
Mhm.
not really. It was different. And it was an all female cast. So that
Okay.
was a really cool experience.
Yeah.
So, really, after I did that first tour in Japan, I think I was 21, 22 at the time, I was just like hooked. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is so much fun. You know, I get to play music every day and be on tour and stay in hotel rooms and, you know,
Mhm.
travel on planes. And this is awesome. So I think going on that tour, that certainly sealed the deal for me as far as like, all right, this is what I want to do. Um, so that was great. That was really fun. So then I went back and finished up my music ed degree. And that was
Mhm.
certainly another like big awakening. You know, I just went from being on this like super awesome tour in Japan and then going back and then like doing student teaching. And I was just like, oh, you know, it was just, I was like, okay. So actually, an interesting part of my story, after I graduated my music ed degree, I actually didn't do music for a while after that.
Hmm.
I went a full year. I mean, I was always still kind of involved in music on the side, but I went through this year of like not knowing what I was going to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I think having that really cool touring experience and then graduating with a degree that I wasn't really sure I wanted to go into that field, all of a sudden I was like, you know, what do
Mhm.
I do now?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually worked outside of the music field for a year, but I wasn't happy with it. And that is what kind of inspired me to go back to school to get my master's
Okay.
in
Okay.
music. kind of just taking that time away from, music and school to realize that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, to reflect. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I went back to get my master's, did the first year of my master's degree, and started freelancing pretty regularly throughout the Phoenix area,
Hmm.
here and there. And so then after the first year of my master's degree is when I did my first tour with Blast.
Okay. Okay.
And that was a year and a half long contract.
Wow.
We did United States, Japan again, and
Hmm.
Korea. And I mean, again, like being in a show like that, an experience like that, definitely was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I'm back on track.
Hmm.
And after that, I went back, finished my master's degree. And at that time, when I came back to Arizona, after that first Blast tour, that was when it was like the freelancing before was okay. And then all of a sudden, it was like I was working like all the time. So just like by
Wow.
having that one, I always say, like, I think sometimes it just takes one big thing on your resume,
Hmm.
or, just one thing to kind of get your foot in the door. Um, so I started freelancing a lot in Arizona. I guess my main job was I was the trombonist at Arizona Broadway Theater. So
Okay.
doing a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
pit orchestra shows. And that was super consistent work. I mean, it was just like show after show after show, and,
Hmm.
8 shows a week. And
Wow.
yeah, so that was great. And then I played everything. It was just it was like whatever, the phone rang for. And I got really into the local music scene too. So playing in like original bands and doing all that. And
Yeah, yeah.
that was super fun. So
Wow.
I guess just like, networking and freelancing and just saying yes to everything, and just, I don't know, just doing everything, it's like,
Yeah.
um, but yeah. And then eventually in 2016, I moved to Japan, and that opened up more opportunities as far as playing shows here. And yeah, here we are
Wow.
today,
Yeah,
stuck
yeah.
at home. So
So I guess a couple of things from the
yeah,
story you just kind of told everyone.
yeah,
So did you move to Japan? Because I remember reading your bio, you were saying you were really interested and had a connection with the nature there. Is that the main
yeah.
reason, or was it for a job or for?
Well, the main reason I technically moved here, how I'm allowed to have my visa, is from my husband's job. He's
Okay.
a musician as well, trombone player. He plays in the U.S. Navy band.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
so that
Cool.
is, technically how I have my visa.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's kind of a coincidence that we ended up moving here because, like I mentioned, I did that show Odyssey in 2008,
Hmm.
and then I did the Blast tour in 2012. Here was my first one. So
Hmm.
by the time we moved here in 2016, I think I had already been to Japan for work maybe 3, 4, 5 times already.
Wow.
And, I had a network in the Tokyo area. So it kind of really worked out, that we moved here. And then, once I was here, I've been able to get other jobs as well. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great.
uh, yeah, it was kind of coincidence that, like, for some reason life just like kept bringing me back here.
Hmm. So for you
So
trombonists out there, dream big.
yeah.
Another thing was, I know you were saying that you had that big breaking point when you were on tour with Blast for a year and a half. I think that's another thing. It could be that one thing that can really help your career out, your performing career.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's a big change. You ended up doing your undergrad in music education, and you ended up
Yes.
kind of getting a bug for performing because of
Yeah.
that 2008 tour. So yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And without that experience, like, I'm not sure. Yeah, it's kind of like you almost have to experience it before you know that's what you want to do. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't go to my undergrad for music performance, but yeah, it's like if you have never performed professionally, how do you know that's what you want to do, kind of thing?
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know. So really, yeah, having that experience was what sealed the deal for me.
What's it like studying with Ralph Sauer and Doug Yo and touring with the Broadway production Blast that you were just talking about?
So, yeah, the first year of my master's degree, I studied with Ralph Sauer, who is or was the principal trombonist of the LA Phil.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, first year of my master's degree, I studied with him, and we really didn't spend a whole lot of time together. At the time that he was teaching at ASU,
Mm-hmm.
he was actually still living in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
So he would just come to Arizona, 2 days a week. So
Yeah.
yeah, we really didn't have like a whole lot of interaction outside of our lessons. But I will say, Ralph, he was a very, very strict teacher and had like incredibly high expectations,
Mm.
incredibly high. So that was really something I had never experienced before, coming out of a music ed degree
Yeah.
and then taking some time away from music. And then I'm coming back for the first year of my master's degree in trombone performance. So
Yeah.
yeah, I was kind of blindsided by that. I didn't realize how high, the
The bar
expectations.
was.
Yeah, the bar was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was certainly an experience, and also at the time, I mean, even to this day, I wasn't really interested in orchestral playing, which obviously that's what Ralph's main thing was.
Mm-hmm.
So, I had other interests, playing in marching band and playing shows and playing with bands and going on tour and doing that kind of stuff. So, I mean, we didn't always see eye to eye musically in a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, I sure learned a lot. The number one thing I learned is that in the music industry, there is always going to be someone out there who is viewing you from the top standard, with the most harsh ears, judging you all the way up here. So I think that's an important lesson to learn, that there are going to be people who are listening to your playing like that.
Yeah.
Certainly something to be aware of. I certainly learned that from studying with Ralph, that was out there.
Yeah, it's especially competitive in orchestral world.
Yes, incredibly. And then I also just learned a lot from listening to him play. I would say to this day, he's certainly one of the most consistent brass players I've ever heard. When he would go to perform for us, it's like rarely, if ever, did he miss a note.
Wow.
Everything was just super accurate, super controlled, super clean. So I remember really, thinking that about his playing, that it was just very impressive in that regard. And then also when I was studying with him, he was working on a lot of arrangements for the trombone, mostly for like solo trombone and piano. Okay. So he was also always bringing in new arrangements for us to play. And so that was kind of cool. Like just always having that new music coming in. And he's like, hey, here, I just arranged this. Check it out. Here, play this. So it was nice to have that aspect of it in the teacher. So
cool.
All right, so that was year one of my master's. That was with Ralph SAUER.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was the first year. All right.
Yeah, first year of my master's. Yeah, it's hard to talk about, not to only talk about the teachers without, for me, saying of like what year that was in my life. It's like helping me relate like what was going on.
It's great for context. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So next was the second year of my master's. I studied with Doug Yo. Who's actually a bass trombonist. Mm-hmm. And so in between the first year of my master's and the second year, I actually took a year and a half off from school to do the blast tour. So quite a lot of time had passed. And honestly, Doug Yo is 100% the reason I went back to ASU. When I left after my first year, I wasn't sure if I was going to go back to finish my master's. So while I was on tour with Blast, I had never met Doug Yo before, and he reached out to me about coming back and finishing my degree. And so, I mean, if he hadn't gotten in touch with me, I'm not sure if I would have come to the conclusion to go back to school on my own. So I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy he did. It was a really positive experience. He was an amazing teacher, but also like an amazing human being. You know, he was certainly like a mentor figure to me. Not just with the trombone, but I mean, before lessons and even after lessons, he always was talking to me like I was a person, like how was I doing? What was going on in my life? Like he didn't want to just talk about the trombone. He wanted to talk about like everything. And, we would have lots of like philosophical, conversations. And I just really enjoyed studying with him. I truly felt that he like cared about me as a person, and he was really into like letting me just kind of guide my own, journey. Whatever kind of music I was interested in or what I wanted to play, he was just like, okay, cool, let's do that. So he was, yeah, very much just like a mentor or like a guidance kind of figure
Yeah.
when it
Yeah.
came to a teacher, which, for me personally, I learned how to take that into my own teaching, like me learning,
Hmm.
like, that's the kind of teacher I want to be, like,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
really mentoring your students. He was also super involved in the trombone studio. So we had a trombone choir, which was really fun. Out
Yeah.
of all the ensembles I played in school, I liked trombone choir the best.
Yeah. It's
So
cool. It's really cool.
yeah, and
Yeah.
we got to record an album with that trombone choir, and it was just a really cool environment, the trombone studio. So, oh, well, I mean, as a player too, sorry, I'm like kind of thinking of, stay on track. I love Doug Yo as a player, like, for just the way he created music, the way he like shaped his phrases, and he was just like a very emotional kind of player, if that makes sense. Like
It does.
I,
Yeah.
I certainly learned about creating music from hearing him play. There was always an emotion, there was always a story behind
Hmm.
his playing. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely learned a lot from him. We still keep in touch today. We still send emails, and I'll send him photos because he's a Yamaha artist, I believe. So
Hmm.
he comes to Japan. We've never met up
Oh.
in Japan. We've tried to make it happen, but I remember one year there was like a typhoon that came
Oh
through, and
wow.
travel plans changed. But yeah, I still keep in touch with him to this day, emails, and I'll send him pictures here now and then. And so, okay, so Blast. Gosh, okay. Well, I just got off my most recent tour. Gosh, just last October, September.
Hmm.
And then my first tour was with them was in 2011. So, I mean, I guess I've been working for them for the past 8 years.
Hmm.
And yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I certainly is in my mind the largest thing on my resume, or the biggest thing. So it's certainly had an impact on my career.
Hmm.
So I mean, touring with Blast is awesome. I did one U.S. tour with them, but all the other one U.S., one Korea, and the rest of it in Japan.
Okay. Okay.
And so yeah, touring Japan is awesome. The people here are really appreciative, like the fans. So that's a really cool experience. But as far as like what I learned from Blast or what it kind of did, for me, it definitely taught me, my first tour, it's like it definitely taught me how to be a professional touring musician, what it feels like to be on tour,
Hmm.
what it feels like to, I mean, in Japan, sometimes we do 10 shows a week.
Man. Wow.
So, yeah, just that idea of like what it takes to perform that consistently every day
Hmm.
or sometimes twice a day. I definitely learned that from that show. I mean, and we had to work really hard. There was also always like a really long rehearsal process leading up to the tour,
Hmm.
usually around 6 or 7 weeks of just nothing but rehearsal all day. So,
Wow.
yeah, definitely being around music, constantly learning the show, and yeah, just how to perform every night, how to be consistent. There is no option to be tired or to have a bad chop day. You just have to figure it out. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it was great for that, like learning how to perform consistently, just night after night after night.
Yeah.
And but I think the coolest thing that has happened to me from Blast is just the network of musicians that I have met. So I've gotten, tons of other work or tons of other opportunities come up from the other musicians that I know in Blast.
Huh.
And, now a lot of them are off doing all these other projects and all these other things all over the world.
Yep.
And it's like we have a Facebook group, with all the people who have done Blast since its conception, so
Oh
it's
yeah. Yeah. Cool.
it's
Cool.
just a really cool network and community to be a part of. And those people, I mean, they're some of my best friends. We since the pandemic started, we've been doing, the trombone section from Blast. We've been doing like Zoom calls and,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
Cool.
just been a really great thing to be a part of, getting to tour, getting to perform every night, and then also just being a part of this amazing network that I know I'm going to have for, the rest of my life. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's been really cool.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah.
Question number 6. What was the biggest obstacle you have had to overcome so far?
I'd say the biggest obstacle was when I moved to Japan in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
full time. And all of a sudden, I wish I would have done this earlier, coulda, woulda, shoulda. But all of a sudden, I realized, okay, so all those tricks that I learned in the United States of how to be a freelance musician, I'm like, oh, none of those work if you can't speak the language. So, I didn't really realize
Mm.
how much of being a freelance musician is networking, right? I mean, making
Mm-hmm.
phone calls, sending emails, having conversations with people, going up to people, at a gig or in public and introducing yourself. And,
Mm-hmm.
how much of that relies on language skills, communication skills. So, the first year I was here, I mean, I studied Japanese like a crazy person. It was like all I did was study Japanese. So I would certainly say that. I mean, having to learn a new language in order to even be able to send an email to someone to ask about a gig or to even be able to introduce myself. So,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, yeah, that was a
Yeah.
huge obstacle. And then luckily I was able to find work here, but it was super hard. I had to be in rehearsals, and until I gained those language skills, I was always like, oh my God, where are we? What was that instruction?
Mm-hmm.
Being in a rehearsal conducted in a foreign language. Well, it's not, to me, it was foreign, but
That's
I guess
rough.
not. I mean, so yeah, I like kind of, if everyone could like have that experience of what it's like to live in a foreign country and try to work when you can't speak the language. Yeah. But
Yeah.
musicians can do that, if you were like a doctor or a lawyer or something that was really like literal, or that you needed a lot of writing for, it's like you would have a lot harder time like kind of transitioning into that career. But I feel
Yeah.
like for musicians, as long as you knew a little bit, you could make it work, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's one of the toughest. I'm sure a lot of people out there can relate. I know I've had a taste of it. I haven't had to learn a completely new language
Yeah.
like you have. I know others that have had to sit there, and I guess on the bright side, that's the best way to learn a language, to immerse yourself in the culture and the language. You're surrounded by
Yeah.
everyone who, in this case, speaks Japanese. But
Yeah,
I've had it.
definitely.
Yeah, I've had a taste with it with Spanish, but then again, my background is Spanish speaking, so I can't say the same. So yeah, hopefully that kind of opens a lot of people's eyes out there if they're thinking about being musicians in other countries or interested in it.
Yeah, I would say, and like I said, I wish I would have started studying, because I had been to Japan several times before, but we were always on a tour. You always have a translator. Someone
Mm-hmm.
was always there to kind of like look after you and set up everything for you and translate. So, once I moved here, I realized, I'm like, oh, that was like a security blanket. Like that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like I can't hire my own personal translator to just be with me all the time. So I just wish I would have started studying earlier, or just had more of an appreciation for languages earlier on
Yeah, yeah.
in my life. So
Well, you're doing it
yeah,
now, so
yeah,
that's cool. More than a lot of us
kind
can
of.
say. So,
Yeah.
what is one of the best pieces of advice you have ever received?
I actually have two, but the first one,
It's
I
okay.
don't know why this sticks in my memory. It's kind of funny to like what things end up sticking in your memory. But Michael Coker, who was the jazz band director at ASU,
Hmm.
um, there was one day we were doing like a jazz band concert, and I think that was like when Facebook was just starting to get, people were getting into those like event invites.
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
And so he's like, yeah, I created it. And he was just giving us this lecture of like, he's like, yeah, I created an event invite for the concert. He was like, and he was teaching us how to like invite our entire friends list. He's like, don't just invite your mom and your dad or whoever. He's like, invite everybody. Like, he was getting super into it. And he said, to be a musician, you have to be a shameless self-promoter. He's like, absolutely shameless. And yeah, I always remember that. Like, even to this day, if I hesitate to post something or hesitate, I'm like, you know what? I'm doing it. Shameless. Like, you know, and he was just always a big advocate of that idea. He's like, you know, no one's going to sell your own music like you are, or no one's going to sell your career like you are. So
exactly. Yeah.
I really just remember that statement. Like, I think about it all the time. So thank you, Michael Coker, if you're watching. Yeah. So there's that piece of advice. And then also from Sam Palafian, who I was talking about earlier, he always said, I guess this is funny to think about now in this more feminist day and age, he would say, be a yes man, or I guess a yes person, a yes woman.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that idea of like, don't say no to a gig. Like, someone calls you up, you're available, just say yes, figure out the details later. So he definitely, I always think of that too. It's like, if you're available, take it, you know, if you're going to be freelancing. So he definitely told me that a lot, kind of drilled that into my head.
Yeah. No, that's really great advice for a lot of us out there, including myself. So thanks for sharing that. I'm wondering, you were talking about Yes Man. I wonder if it was around the same time. I think Jim Carrey had a movie that he was a lead in called Yes Man, something like that.
I mean, it could have been. He certainly said it like it was like a catchphrase, you know. He was like, you got to be a yes man. So, I mean, it could have been.
Well, basically, it seems like the kind of big picture of all that is this: take what you can, be shameless. You know, you just have to go out there, promote yourself, say yes to everything. So that kind of ties into everything you've been talking about.
Yeah, I've really kind of just like approached my career that way. I guess from the advice I've gotten from my teachers, but also just because I've always had a lot of varied interests when it comes to music. I mean, even going back to, we were talking about how I got started. I was always like playing different kinds of instruments, and
yeah.
That's just kind of like the person I am. You know, I'm like, especially when it comes to music, I like doing a lot of different stuff. So I think also the idea of just saying everything and doing everything, it really allows you to like try out different stuff. You know, if someone calls you to do a gig and you're like, well, you think it in your mind, you're like, well, I haven't really done anything like that before. No, just try it. It's like you might like it. You might meet somebody that's changes your career. You know, you might play a style of music that you're like, wow, that was super fun. I want to learn more about this style. I'm going to go down this path now. Or you never know who's going to be on that gig. It could be somebody that, like I said, will change your career. So I think that's also the cool part about saying yes to a lot of different things, is it allows you to try a lot of different things, and you never know who you're going to meet. I think that's also a really cool thing in the music industry. Like, you just never know who you're going to meet, and you know, that one person might have an effect on your life, your career. So
it's I think that's really important for musicians now, because it seems like more and more versatility is the name of the game. The specialized spots are so rare now. So, and
I was fortunate to have that instruction, you know, throughout my time in college. So I think, you know, from people like, you know, Michael Coker and Sam Palafian, and, you know, Doug Yo was pretty supportive in that area too. Just this idea of, diversifying, like, you know, playing as many different styles as you can, doing as many different things as you can. You know, if you can get into arranging, if you can get into this, if you can get into that, or even being a multi-instrumentalist, you know, like playing different instruments and being able to double. You know, I play bass trombone and euphonium as well, you know, so just that idea of being able to do all that stuff. It's like, the more you can do, the more jobs you're going to get.
Exactly.
But I will say, like you said, those specialist areas, like they do still exist. So obviously if people have that goal of like, I'm going to, you know, play principal trombone in an orchestra, I mean, I think if that's what you want to do, you have to like go all in on that, because I mean, the competition is so high. So
right.
those things do still exist, But I don't know. I was never interested in going down that
Got it.
particular path.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. How do you balance your personal life and your career life?
So I'm probably the worst person to ask this question to. I am not a very balanced person in the sense that, like, I don't know, I'm a workaholic. I could work all day long from the second I get up to the second my head hits the pillow. So
Mm-hmm.
I certainly struggle with this. But I would have to say it really just comes down to time management. Um, so I'll just use yesterday as an example. You know, I went to, first of all, let me say the restrictions are way less here in Japan. So don't think I'm being crazy or irresponsible. But I went to the beach yesterday with my husband and my friend.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I knew I wanted to go and, you know, have a nice day off. So I set my alarm because I knew I had to film a YouTube video yesterday. So I set my alarm and I got up early and I made sure that I got a few hours of work in before I had my fun for the day or my social time or, you know, spending time with my husband. So I think it just comes down to time management.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
Waking up early, you know, if I, you know, just managing my time. So it's like, well, I can do this fun thing if I get all my work done first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just time management or really scheduling things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I know I want to do something on a Friday night, it's like, okay, well, I have my work set up for the week and this is what I'm going to do. And if I got all my work done, then I could have the little treat of like going and doing something fun or spending time with my family, you know? So
Yeah.
I, I guess it just all comes down to time management for me. Just
Yeah.
trying to squeeze everything in.
So, do you have like a plan or anything? It seems like you're pretty organized and efficient with your time. Do you have like run on a calendar or schedule
Yeah.
time?
So, I mean, right now everything's changed because all I'm doing is online stuff, as many of us are.
Right, right.
I'm not, you know, I don't have a gig calendar right now, you know, no live performances or anything.
Yeah, yeah.
But I do try to stay pretty productive. I usually have just weekly goal. I mean, I have more long-term goals, but I have weekly goals of what I want to do. Like, from my YouTube channel and everything, I have like a content calendar and I try to just post it
Nice.
one video a week on the same day. And, uh, or I'll write myself. I usually write like out like goals for the week and then goals for each day. And I'm a big
Mm-hmm.
checklist person. So
Yeah.
I use my phone, but I just write lists and check things off. And I struggle with this too. I'm trying to find the best way to really spend my time, with all that stuff. It's like time management is always an issue. There's like never enough time in any day. Like
Mm-hmm.
it seems like every day at the end of the day, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I have so much to do.
Mm-hmm.
I probably don't, but it's all like self-inflicted at this point. But
Yeah.
just trying to like make the most out of every day and trying to stay organized. Lists and a content calendar, I guess, are the way I do that. So.
Yeah. That's great. I think a lot of us can relate to that. And if you can't
Mhm.
relate to that, it's probably good to get on a schedule if you're trying to make a career out of this, playing
Yeah.
trombone, whatever trombone related, whether it's videos, educational,
Yeah.
performing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think with that, it's certainly like, yeah, the idea of like the long-term goal. And then, like I say, I do like a weekly goal. Setting a weekly goal really helps me with time management because I'll be like, all right, I want to get these things done this week.
Hmm.
And then I can kind of shuffle around the days and, you know, fit
Nice.
in spending time with my family and, you know, trying to be social and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, just trying to fit it all in. So.
Cool. Nice. Thanks, Lisa. Okay. I guess this kind of ties into our next question. Question number
Sure.
9. What projects are you currently working on right now?
Well, again, no gigs on the calendar, no live music. So anyway, I am really putting in all my stock into the online world that we are all now kind of forced into, whether we like it or not.
Hmm.
So I've really been focusing on my YouTube channel. I think that's been my main focus. I'm doing one video a week, really trying hard to stay on that schedule. And it's kind of funny, like when you think about it, it's like one video a week doesn't seem like that much, but I mean, you do YouTube too. You know, like how much work goes into these videos.
It's tough,
Um,
and you're doing like collages sometimes, like those.
yeah,
Yeah, and those take even more. Like I did one a minute
yeah,
and a half recently, and that took forever.
yeah. They really do take a lot of time. But I think I'm getting faster. I think I'm
Yeah.
learning more. So but yeah, definitely like my YouTube channel. I'm trying to go hard on that right now.
Hmm.
My goal is to get monetized, you know,
Hmm.
and eventually turn that into an income stream.
Hmm.
I'm also super interested in not only the YouTube channel, but I've been trying really hard to grow my Instagram account right now too, and just
Yeah.
really get into this new online world and trying to find other ways. It's kind of almost like my plan is worst case scenario, this is the world we have to live in for a while as musicians and we don't get to play live. I want to be set up to like have all my music stuff and my business online, you know. So
Hmm.
I'm really interested in growing my audience online and finding ways to supplement my income, you know,
Hmm.
through online. So
Yeah.
I'm really into that right now. Been doing a lot of research too, and more on the business side as well.
Great.
um,
That's nice. Yeah.
yeah, so I would say that's certainly what I'm working on now. And then I do teach a few students. I do teach Zoom lessons as well. So I'm also interested in growing my, you know, online Zoom studio. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, but just putting a lot of stock, a lot of effort into the online world, I would say, are my current projects.
Got it. Yeah. No, I think it's really important because I think that's where a lot of things are going now. Maybe not completely, and hopefully not completely, but
Yeah, hopefully not.
as musicians, we want to be prepared for the next phase or the
Hmm.
newest technology, and especially right
Yeah.
now during COVID, we don't know how this is going to change things when the pandemic's over. So
Yeah, that is, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's just so many unknowns. You know, it's like we just don't know what's going to happen. But I do know, or I've experienced the past few months, like we all have, just how we can do this stuff online, and
yeah.
it's been really cool. I've actually gotten to meet a lot of really cool people,
Hmm.
you know, other trombonists and other musicians, and it's actually been kind of interesting in that way to, you know, get to do interviews like this, or, you know, I've done a
Yeah.
few
Yeah.
other interviews, and, you know, just doing stuff like that. And then like the warm-up classes, everyone's
Hmm.
doing a lot of warm-up stuff
Hmm.
online, and the online lessons and all the collaborations that are happening. And I actually think it's been really cool. It's kind of been a way for like the musical community to kind of just sit back and just like reconnect with each other in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I guess in that way we're actually kind of lucky to be able to connect during these times. I mean, I know a lot of musicians, including yourself, including myself, are out of some work. That predominantly for
Yeah.
you is performing. Somewhat for
Yeah.
me, I'm still a student right now, so I'm
Uh-huh.
not out there right now. But yeah. So yeah, and for those of you who didn't know, I met Lisa actually through social media. So
Yeah.
she's here
Yeah.
now, and it's a big thing now. So
Yeah, it's a really like great way to meet people, you know. I mean, through social media, it's like you can kind of, I mean, you know, I love trombone, so you know, everyone I follow is a trombone player, and
hmm.
or other musicians too, you know. So you can kind of, you can really choose, you know, your little niche, your little community.
Yeah, right.
It's really easy to find it and find those people, you know, like you're saying, we met on social media, and it's like, hey, you play trombone, I play trombone, you know, like let's
Yeah,
be friends. You know, it's just it kind of makes it a little more simple, makes the world a little smaller in that sense. So
it does. It does.
yeah,
If you had to leave trombonists and musicians with only one piece of advice, what would that be?
I have two, but one of the other ones I already
It's
said.
okay. It's okay.
So I would say this is something I wish I did more: record everything you do, everything. And this is way easier to do nowadays than, you know, when I was going up through school and college and everything. um, just record everything. It's the fastest way to learn.
Hmm.
You know, I wish that I would have like, my husband actually recorded all his old college lessons,
Hmm.
just audio recording, and he listens to them sometimes. And I
Yeah.
wish I would have done that, you know, like just
Mm.
reflecting back today, like thinking like, oh yeah, like taking lessons with Ralph Sauer and Doug Yo, and you know, I'm sure my memory is only remembering some of the information.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
so I certainly would have liked to record my lessons to go back and reference, but even like your practice sessions and of course your performances for two reasons. One, you're going to learn from them, right? You're going to be able to like self-assess your own performance, but also this idea now of like, you have content to use, you know, if you record every performance you do, you can clip that together and post it online. Or if an audition comes up and they're like, hey, we need you to send in live clips, you already have them, you know? So, and I've met a lot of other professional musicians who do that. It's like, yeah, you just record everything and then you just have it. It's ready to go. You can use it, obviously, to improve, right? You go back, listen to your performance. Oh, that went well. That didn't go so well. Mm-hmm. But then also this idea of having content ready to go. And, you know, not every live performance is going to be perfect, and you might need to clip up some stuff and, you know, make a nice presentation, but just having it. I think that's something I wish I would have done earlier. Just started recording more, just everything.
Nice,
so,
nice. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, and that can go for like teaching too. I mean, music teachers, you know, I know some of my music education friends, you know, they record their teaching sessions, you know, for them to go back and reference or send in for a job interview or whatever. So.
Yeah, I remember there was this phrase I used to hear some teachers say back in the tape recording days, the tape recorder doesn't lie, or something along those lines.
No, that is very true. I mean, there'd be times where you think like, wow, I nailed that. That was so good. And then you listen back, you're like, no, I was actually rushing. Like, how did I not hear that? You know, so yeah, it certainly makes you evaluate your own playing. So it's, and you're able to improve so much faster. Like this past blast tour that I was doing, we would record the show and then I would watch it every night, you know? And so it's like, you're able to just evaluate your performance, see what you did wrong, like fix it the next day, you know? So you get better faster that way. Yeah. If you're listening back and evaluating yourself. So record yourselves.
All right. So that's it. If you made it through that entire video, congrats to you, because that was almost an hour long. And my apologies for the video losing connection there in the last 6 or 7 minutes. I hope a lot of you got something out of this. There was a lot in there to learn from the experiences that she shared. So that's it for this week. If you found this video useful or interesting, please like it and share it, and consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. If you have any questions or if you have any requests for future videos, please leave them down below in the comments section. And until then, we'll see you all next time. Peace.